Hello friends, my name is Koolio and welcome back to the channel. Today guys, I'm going to be going over the team building basics that you need to know in Langrisser M. Now the reason why I'm putting this video together is I've noticed a lot lately on the Reddit forums, here on the YouTube channel, and even on the Koolio KREW Discord channel, a lot of people asking how to do the best team setup for the current characters that they have. Now, in the next couple of days, a lot of us are going to be hitting level 34, 35, and which will allow our heroes to be able to unlock their faction buff skills. Now, if you guys don't know what the faction buffs are, I'll leave a link down below to a video that I posted talking about what faction buffs are, where to get them, and why they're important. Now, with these faction buffs, they're essentially the cornerstone to your team moving forward. And so in this video, I'm going to help you guys kind of set up a overall basic good team that can beat most of the PvE content moving forward. However, just a disclaimer, depending on the type of content that you come across, certain events, certain dungeons, and even PvP do require specific types of heroes with specific skills in order to accomplish. The team that I'm going to teach you guys to build today is more of a generally good team that will help you beat most of the content. And so jumping into this, you have to understand first, who are your faction buffers? For example, on my team right now, I've got a couple of different faction buffers. I've got Bernhardt, I've got Diehard, I've got Elwyn, and even Freya has a faction buff. You can go through, if you guys don't know where they are, is in the upgrade class system. And their final class tree, you can go ahead and look at their class skills, and you can find their faction buff, as it does say that in the description that it says faction buff before then, and so you can understand which characters have faction buffs. Now, going in and building a specific team, I like to think of the general rule that was used in a lot of MMORPGs in the day, known as the Trinity. You've got your tank, your healer, and your attacker. And so in this, I've got kind of 5 of them to work off of. You've got your main damage dealer, you've got your tank, you've got your healer, you've got an off damage dealer, and then you've got an off support character. That can be an extra healer, a buffer. Now, when it comes to damage dealers, a main damage dealer could be a physical damage dealer like Diehard, or you could go with a mage or a spellcaster as a main damage dealer that does magic damage. So let's go ahead and start off with setting up my specific team that I'm going to be going towards in the future. Now, I'm going to have Bernhardt as kind of my cornerstone. He's going to be one of my faction buffers or my faction leader. Now, taking a look at his specific faction buff down here through the Emperor's skill line, it's called the Imperial Power, and it only works for characters that are in the Empire's Honor faction. So if I go ahead and head back here and click on this icon up here at the top right, I can see the Empire's Honor and see which characters are specifically underneath that specific faction and will gain a benefit from that faction buff. Now, Bernhardt is a pretty good damage dealer with a lot of self-sustain. However, I'm not going to use him as my main damage dealer. I'm going to probably use him as a off-handed damage dealer to help support some of my characters and deal a little bit of extra damage during matches. But that faction buff is going to be super key. So he's going to be my first cornerstone moving into this team setup. Now, because he is part of the Empire's Honor and his faction only works for the Empire's Honor, there are only specific characters that I can use going forward. Now, I want a tank character, and right now, one of the best tank characters in the game is Vargas, and I cannot overestimate, or whatever the word is, to let you guys know that this character is absolutely fantastic. He has saved my butt so many times in this game, so I absolutely love Vargas and I want him on my team. Luckily, he is part of the Empire's Honor, and so he will receive that buff from Bernhardt. So there we go. We've got my offhanded attacker, and then we've got my tank character. Now, moving forward, I want a good healer on my team, and one of my best healers is Tiaras. Unfortunately, she is not a part of the Empire's Honor and will not receive that specific faction buff. So if I want to add her onto my team, I'm going to need to find another character that will grant her a faction buff. Now, most of the players, even on the Chinese servers, say the most faction buff characters that you're going to want to do is two different factions on a specific team. You can do one, but it kind of limits your versatility, and so I'm going to do with 2. So looking at her specific factions, she is part of the Protagonist, she's part of the Origin of Light, and the Princess League. Luckily, I do have a character part of the Origin of Light that does have a faction buff, and that is Diehard. So you can see right here, he is part of the Origin of Light, and if I go ahead and take a look at the High Master, he's got the Light of Hope, which does apply to the Origins of Light. And so I'm going to add Diehard onto my team, adding him as my second faction buffer, which will also give that faction buff to my main healer. And I'm going to use Die-Hard as my main damage dealer because of his crit bonus. Now, Die-Hard is a fantastic character specifically for PvP. He does do a good amount of damage in PvE if you build him in that specific direction, which is what I'm going to work towards. So I've got my main damage dealer with Die-Hard, with an offhanded damage dealer with Bernhardt, my healer, and then I've got my tank character. Now I'm going to be looking for a offhanded support character rather than an offhanded like damage dealer. So I'm going to run with Imelda. Luckily, Imelda is part of the Empire's Honor and we will receive the faction buff from Bernhardt. Now the best thing about her too is I'm going to be using her as a buffer, as specifically for Die-Hard's faction buff, it does require that your characters have multiple buffs applied onto them in order for it to work effectively, which is great because she comes with the mass attack skill, which is an extra buff on top of that, which is going to work perfectly with a lot of the defensive buffs that come specifically with tiaras. Now looking at Imelda, one thing that's really nice too is once I upgrade her to the Queen, I'm going to get the mass heal ability along with a giant area of effect damage dealer. So she's going to be my main magical damage dealer to take care of characters that have really high defensive capabilities but low magical defense capabilities, and she's going to be my offhanded healer to be able to support tiaras, because looking back at one of my other characters, Vargas, he's got some abilities, looking at some of the equipment items that he's got going on right now, that require his HP to be above 80%, and so having an offhanded healer is just going to help generally with some of his abilities. And so let's go ahead and go over those simple basics again to help you guys kind of understand it. So starting off with a cornerstone character with a faction buff, we've got Bernhardt. Because Bernhardt is part of the Empire's Honor, I'm going to want to stick with characters that are part of the Empire's Honor as well. Well, I've got him as a offhanded damage dealer. I still need a main damage dealer, I still need a tank, and I still need a healer and a support character. So let's go ahead and start with the tank first, which was Vargas. So now we've got Vargas on the team. He's going to be my main tank moving forward. And I'm going to be able to add Imelda on the team because Imelda is going to be a great offhanded healer and a support character. So I've got 3 Empire Honors characters that are going to be covered under Bernhardt's specific faction buff. However, I really want to add Tiaras onto my team because she's an amazing healer. Unfortunately, she's not a part of the Empire's Honor, but she is part of the Origin of Light. So if we go ahead and look for another character, which is Die-Hard, which I can make as my main attacker, he's got the faction buff for the Origin of Light, and adding him onto my team allows me to also have Tiaras on the team as effectively as I want her to be. And so this is the main team that I've got set up. So I've got an offhanded attacker, I've got a tank, a healer, a support character, and a main attacker that are covered under the faction buff. And so this is the team I'm going to be working towards moving towards the future. And so those are my tips for you guys on the team building here in Langrisser M. If you guys have any questions, let me know down below in the comments, and I'll try my best to help you guys out with your specific teams too if you have any questions in regards to that. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay up to date in the latest in Langrisser M. See you, my friends.